Commander Zillax, we have a critical failure in Habitat 7. The human's gone silent. Zillax's primary manipulators froze over the data terminal. How long? 47 minutes, sir. Security Chief Kale Thas's voice carried the weight of impending catastrophe. No communication. No movement indicators. Nothing. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. The words hit like a plasma charge. 47 minutes of silence in a habitat containing 3 Valkyrie predator cubs, the same species responsible for over 2,000 casualties across 4 systems when improperly socialized. The same species that had killed 3 previous caretakers attempting this exact protocol. Initiate emergency containment procedures. Zillax was already moving toward the observation deck, his secondary arms pulling up the habitat feeds. Contact the council representatives. They need to authorize. Already connected, Commander. Kale Thas fell into step beside him. They're ready to order station evacuation if necessary. If necessary. The words tasted like ash. The Valkyrie cubs were in their imprint critical window, the 60-day period where they either bonded with authority figures or became uncontrollable apex predators. Without constant, active human supervision during this phase, protocol demanded immediate termination. The alternative was 3 fully grown killing machines loose in a station with 2,000 personnel. They burst onto the observation deck, where a dozen staff members crowded around the primary monitor. The feed showed Habitat 7 in crystal clarity, and Zillax's circulatory system went cold. The human, Amelia Williams, behavioral specialist, sat motionless at her desk, completely still, her head bowed over something, unmoving. And the cubs. By the ancestors, Talana, the station's xenobiologist, whispered. They should be tearing the habitat apart by now. She was right. Valkyrie cubs without active engagement became destructive within minutes. Their predatory instincts demanded constant stimulation, constant challenge, constant authority reinforcement. 47 minutes of inactivity should have resulted in shredded furniture, demolished equipment, and 3 increasingly agitated predators working themselves into a feeding frenzy. Instead, all 3 cubs sat eerily calm in a loose circle near the human's desk, clustered around something. Their crystalline eyes focused with an intensity that sent warnings through every threat assessment system in Zillax's brain. Zoom in, he ordered. I need to see what they're doing. The image enhanced. Amelia remained motionless, hunched over her workspace. The cubs hadn't moved. They were just sitting there, watching something. Containment drones are active and standing by, Kyle Thas reported, his voice tight. Termination authorization is being drafted. Council Representative Sinara is demanding immediate assessment of threat level. Tell her. Zillax stopped. Something in the image didn't align. He leaned closer to the screen, his compound eyes straining to process the details. The cubs weren't just sitting. Their forelimbs were positioned strangely, almost like they were holding something. Enhance Quadrant 7-3, he commanded. The image sharpened further, and Zillax felt his understanding of reality tilt sideways. Each cub held what appeared to be a drawing implement, and scattered around them on the habitat floor were sheets of paper covered in crude marks. That's impossible, Talana breathed. Valkyrie cubs don't have the neural capacity for... Emergency council transmission incoming, a communications officer interrupted. They're demanding immediate status report and threat assessment. Zilax couldn't look away from the screen. The human still hadn't moved. The cubs remained focused, calm, their claws carefully gripping markers they shouldn't be able to hold. What in the name of every documented species was happening in that habitat? "She's not incapacitated," Kael'thas said suddenly, adjusting the feed angle. "Look at her hands." The enhanced view showed Amelia's right hand moving in slow, deliberate strokes across a data pad. Her left hand held a physical pen, an archaic human writing implement, which she occasionally used to mark something on actual paper beside her terminal. She wasn't frozen. She was working, intensely focused on what appeared to be administrative paperwork. "I don't understand." Sinara's voice crackled through the comm system, sharp with confusion. "The human is doing clerical work during a critical supervision window?" "That's not the part that concerns me," Zilax muttered, his attention locked on the cubs. They sat in perfect stillness, their predatory eyes tracking every movement of Amelia's hands. Not the aggressive tracking of prey focus. Something else entirely. Something the species assessment files said was neurologically impossible. They were watching to learn. "Replay the last 10 minutes, Talana commanded, her scientific curiosity overriding her alarm. "Frame by frame if necessary." The footage rolled backward, then forward at quarter speed. Zilax watched as one cub, the largest, with darker striping along its spine, shifted its grip on the marker. The movement was clumsy, uncoordinated, but deliberate. The cub lowered the marker to the paper and dragged it across the surface, leaving a jagged line. Then it looked up at Amelia. The human glanced over, smiled, actually smiled at an apex predator in its most volatile developmental phase, and returned to her work. The cub made another mark, this one slightly more controlled. "That's not possible," Talana said flatly. "Velkari cubs are incapable of passive observation learning. Their neural pathways literally don't support imitative behavior until they're at least 6 months old. These cubs are 8 weeks. "Run a diagnostic on the feed systems," Zilax ordered. "Maybe there's a malfunction." "Already done, sir." The tech officer shook his head. "All systems nominal. What we're seeing is real-time, unaltered footage." Kael'thas pulled up the species assessment database, scrolling rapidly. "Here. Velkari attention span during imprint phase. Maximum 8 seconds for non-food, non-threat stimuli. Requires constant active engagement to prevent aggressive episodes." "Those cubs have been sitting still for 23 minutes now," someone whispered. The observation deck fell silent, except for the hum of equipment. On screen, Amelia set down her pen and picked up the data pad, tilting her head as she read something. One of the smaller cubs chirped, a surprisingly soft sound for a creature designed by evolution to hunt pack animals twice its size, and held up its paper. The human looked over. "Oh, that's really good. I love how you did the swirly part there." She was praising it, praising a Velkari predator cub like it was a youngling showing off schoolwork. The cub chirped again, a sound that the universal translator couldn't quite parse, but somehow conveyed unmistakable pleasure. It returned to its paper with renewed focus. "This is impossible," Talana repeated, but her voice had lost its certainty. She moved closer to the screen, her optical sensors dilating. "They're not just making random marks. Look at the patterns." Zilax zoomed in further on the cub's papers. His circulatory system seemed to slow. The marks weren't random at all. They were crude, barely controlled, but they showed clear attempts at replicating specific shapes. Shapes that matched the doodles Amelia had sketched in the margins of her physical documents. Simple flowers, geometric patterns, a rough circle with lines radiating outward, a sun, perhaps, or a star. And the cubs were copying them, actively trying to reproduce what they'd watched the human create. "Get me the previous observation logs," Zillax said quietly. "I need to see how long this has been happening." "Commander, the Council is demanding immediate action. Tell them to stand by." He couldn't tear his eyes away from the screen. "We're not terminating anything until I understand what we're actually looking at here." On the monitor, Amelia held up her latest doodle, a lopsided heart, and showed it to the nearest cub. The creature leaned forward, studying it intently, then carefully attempted to draw its own version. Every documented principle of Velkari behavioral science said this was impossible. And yet, there it was, happening in real time. Senior behaviorist Jitaro arrived within minutes, his reputation preceding him like a shockwave. 40 years studying predator socialization across 17 species. Author of the definitive text on Velkari developmental psychology. If anyone could explain this, it would be him. He watched the feed in silence for exactly 90 seconds. "The feeds are accurate?" His voice carried the hollow quality of someone watching their life's work crumble. "Verified 3 times, sir," the tech officer confirmed. Jitaro's chromatic plates shifted through colors indicating deep distress. "Those are pack bonding behaviors. Cooperative activity engagement, voluntary proximity without dominance displays." He gestured at the screen with a trembling manipulator. "Theoretically impossible before 6 months of age. Those cubs are 8 weeks old. Could the human have accelerated their development somehow?" Sinara demanded through the comm. "Acceleration doesn't work that way. Neural pathways either exist or they don't. This would require..." Jitaro trailed off, his entire frame sagging. "This would require rewriting everything we know about the species." Zillax made a decision. "Open a comm channel to the habitat, carefully." "Commander, if we startle the cubs..." "Do it." A soft chime sounded in Habitat 7. On screen, Amelia's head lifted. She tapped her earpiece without looking away from her work. "Hey, what's up?" The casualness of it sent a ripple of shock through the observation deck. "Ms. Williams," Zillax began carefully, "we've noticed you haven't reported in for nearly an hour. We need to understand what's happening with the cubs." "Oh?" She glanced at the 3 predators, who'd all looked up at the sound of voices, their markers pausing mid-stroke. "Yeah, sorry about that. They were getting restless earlier, so I let them join me for paperwork time. Figured they could use some quiet activity." Quiet activity. With Velkari predator cubs. "Could you elaborate on that methodology?" Jitaro interjected, his voice strained. "Sure, it's just parallel play, where they do their own thing alongside me doing my thing. Makes them feel included without requiring constant direct interaction." She held up one of the cubs' papers to the camera. "See? They're working on their projects while I work on mine." "Parallel play," Jitaro repeated slowly, "is not in any documented Velkari socialization protocol." Amelia laughed, actually laughed. "I mean, I'm not doing anything special. They just want to be part of the group, feel like they're contributing. So I give them materials and let them work alongside me." She swiveled her chair to show the camera her desk more clearly. Her official reports covered the main workspace, but the margins were filled with simple doodles. Flowers, stars, abstract swirls, geometric shapes. "Sometimes I doodle while thinking." They noticed and got curious. She gestured to the cubs, who were now all watching the conversation with alert but calm attention. So I gave them paper and markers, non-toxic ones, obviously. Now it's part of our routine. Kyle pulled up the Cubs' papers on a secondary screen. Crude scribbles covered each sheet, but clear patterns emerged. Circles, lines, attempts at the same flower shape Amelia had drawn. One cub had created something that might have been a star, if stars were drawn by someone with no opposable thumbs and minimal motor control. "This is impossible," Talana whispered. Velkari cubs lack the fine motor control for implement manipulation. Their claws aren't designed for precision grip. They should be physically incapable of holding those markers. On screen, the largest cub shifted its grip, adjusting the marker with surprising delicacy. It made a careful stroke across the paper, then chirped, a sound of satisfaction. "They shouldn't have sustained attention for non-food objects," Jotaro added, his voice hollow. "Maximum 8 seconds, according to every study. They've been engaged for over 30 minutes. And they definitely shouldn't be exhibiting cooperative, non-aggressive behavior toward an authority figure during the imprint phase," Kael'thas said. "The protocol exists because cubs this age respond to authority with either submission violence or dominance challenges." Amelia glanced at the 3 cubs, who were now returning to their drawings, apparently bored with the conversation. "Huh. They've been total sweethearts since we started this. No aggression at all during quiet time." "Total sweethearts?" Sinara echoed through the comm, her tone suggesting she'd just heard someone describe a supernova as slightly warm. "Miss Williams," Jotaro said carefully, "how long have you been implementing this parallel play approach?" "Pretty much since day 1. Amelia shrugged. "I figured constant stimulation would be exhausting for babies. Everyone needs downtime, right? So we have active play sessions, training sessions, and then quiet time where we just coexist. They seem to like having their own tasks." She said it like it was obvious, like she hadn't just casually dismantled 4 decades of xenobiological research with the phrase, "everyone needs downtime." The observation deck remained silent as Amelia returned to her paperwork, and 3 apex predator cubs contentedly continued their artwork. "Walk us through your complete daily routine with the cubs," Jotaro said. And it wasn't a request. He'd pulled up a data terminal and was already recording. "Every detail." Amelia set down her pen. "Okay, sure. We start with morning feeding. That's high energy, lots of play and physical activity. Then we do training exercises for about an hour. Basic commands, social cues, that kind of thing." "Standard protocol so far," Kael'thas muttered. "After that, we have quiet time. I'll do administrative work, or read, or sometimes just crafts if I'm ahead on paperwork. The cubs have learned to settle down during these periods. They watch what I'm doing, bring me things they find interesting. Their version of participating, I guess." "Bring you things." Talana leaned forward. "What kind of things?" "Oh, random stuff. Interesting rocks from their enrichment area, pieces of fabric, their toys, whatever catches their attention. I examine each item, tell them what I think about it, then set it aside. They seem to like the interaction without it being, I don't know, demanding." Jotaro's manipulators moved rapidly across his terminal. "And the drawing materials?" "That started about 2 weeks in. One of them, Stripe, the big one, kept trying to grab my pen. Not aggressively, just curious. So I got them their own supplies." She smiled. "Now it's their favorite part of quiet time. They'll bring their papers over to show me, I'll comment on them, and they go back to work. It's actually really cute." "Cute," Sinara said through the comm, her voice strange. She calls them cute. Zilax was accessing historical records, his secondary arms flying across multiple screens. Pull up the previous caretaker protocols, all 3 attempts. The data materialized. Zilax felt something cold settle in his core as he read. Constant active engagement, he said slowly. Every waking hour. Stimulation exercises, challenge courses, dominance reinforcement, threat response training. No rest periods, no observation time, no downtime. Kael'thas finished, horror dawning in his voice. We were exhausting them. Jataro's chromatic plates had gone completely pale. The cubs weren't failing to bond. They were overstimulated to the point of stress-induced aggression. We were triggering their threat responses with our own protocols. Velkhari are pack predators, Talana said, her words coming faster as understanding crystallized. In natural environments, packs have activity cycles, hunting, eating, and then rest periods where young observe adult behavior. Jataro completed. Calm modeling. We based our entire assessment on adult Velkhari in combat or hunting scenarios. We never studied their developmental cycles in pack environments. On screen, Amelia had returned to her work. The smallest cub finished its drawing and carefully carried the paper over to her desk, setting it down with surprising gentleness. Amelia paused, examined the drawing seriously, then gave what the universal translator interpreted as effusive praise. The cub chittered happily and retrieved a fresh sheet. They're not just bonding, Jataro whispered. They're exhibiting social learning behaviors 6 months ahead of projected development. The neural pathways are forming faster because they're actually being allowed to form naturally. Zilax's comm exploded with incoming transmissions. Council representatives, station directors, the heads of 4 other facilities with active Velkhari socialization programs, all of which were failing. Commander, Sin Ara's voice cut through the chaos. We need a full methodology report. Immediately. And we're requesting Ms. Williams provide consultation to the Velkhari program on Station Helix 7. They're currently at threat level critical with 2 cubs. Station Meridian 3 is also requesting consultation, another voice added. 3 cubs, 2 caretaker casualties this month. Belay the termination protocols, Zilax commanded. Full behavioral assessment of current subjects. I want metrics on aggression incidents, bonding indicators, and developmental markers compared to baseline projections. Already running it, sir, a tech officer reported. 0 aggression incidents since Miss Williams implemented the parallel activity approach 31 days ago. Previous record for this phase was 18 hours before first incident. 0 incidents in 31 days. Jataro, Zilax said quietly, how long will it take to restructure the protocols? The senior behaviorist stared at the screen where 3 predator cubs peacefully created art alongside a human who thought this was perfectly normal. To restructure 4 decades of research? Years. Maybe longer. His chromatic plates shifted to a color Zilax had never seen on him before. Something like humility mixed with awe. We've been doing this wrong from the beginning. Then we start over. Talana, begin revising the species assessment. Kael'thas, cancel all containment protocols for Habitat 7 and flag this approach as the new baseline. Zilax pulled up Amelia's contract. And someone extend Miss Williams' contract, indefinitely. On the monitor, Amelia held up her latest doodle, a simple house with a crooked roof. All 3 cubs immediately began attempting their own versions, their markers moving with increasing confidence across the paper. Human-compatible socialization, Talana murmured, already typing. That's what we'll call it in the documentation. Jataro nodded slowly, watching the impossible scene unfold. The humans don't just bond with them, they let the cubs be cubs first. The changes rippled outward from Habitat 7 like a shockwave through water. Within 48 hours, Station Command had implemented mandatory observation learning periods across all predator-cub programs. Within a week, 3 other stations reported immediate reductions in aggression incidents. Within 2 weeks, the Galactic Council had commissioned a full study, Human Parallel Activity Methodology and its applications in xenobiological development. The Velkari homeworld itself had submitted a formal request for Amelia's consultation on their planetary socialization programs. 17 facilities, 200 cubs, a complete overhaul of everything they thought they knew about their own species. And human caretakers were suddenly the most sought-after specialists in the Federation. Species previously deemed impossible to socialize were being flagged for reevaluation with human methodologies. 47 species, centuries of failed protocols, all because one human thought cubs might like having quiet time. In Habitat 7, Amelia set down her stylus and stretched, her spine making small popping sounds that the universal translator struggled to categorize. All right, that's enough paperwork for today. 3 heads immediately lifted. The cubs gathered their papers carefully, a behavior that still made Xilax's threat assessment systems malfunction, and carried them over to Amelia in what could only be described as an orderly fashion. She took each paper seriously, examining the scribbles with genuine attention. Stripe, I love how bold your lines are getting. Very confident. And Patches, look at you working on circular shapes. And Little Bit, this color combination is really interesting. The cubs chittered, their pleasure evident in every movement. Amelia stood, walking to the habitat wall where she'd mounted a display board. She pinned each drawing up carefully, adding them to the growing gallery of crude artwork. Okay, guys, snack time. Then we're doing story hour. Who wants to hear about the brave explorers today? 3 predators, who should have been tearing through reinforced barriers for food, instead actually lined up, and followed Amelia toward the feeding area with calm, purposeful steps. She turned apex predators into students, Kael'thas muttered, watching from the observation deck. Into children. Amelia's voice crackled over the intercom, and Xilax could hear the laughter in it. They're just babies. Babies need routines and to feel useful. Not exactly rocket science, you guys. In the background, the cubs chirped contentedly as Amelia distributed their meal portions. Each waited for permission before eating. Each stayed in their designated spot. Perfect pack behavior that shouldn't exist for another 4 months minimum. Jataro was already 3 chapters into his new paper, Reconceptualizing Predator Development Through Human Parallel Integration. The Galactic Council was establishing a dedicated Human Insights Division for behavioral protocols. The Federation's entire approach to xenobiology was being rebuilt from the ground up. Because humans understood something the rest of the galaxy had missed. Babies were babies first, predators second. Xilax zoomed in on the display board, examining the cubs' artwork more closely. Most were abstract scribbles, enthusiastic chaos on paper. But a few showed emerging patterns, shapes that might have been intentional. One in particular made him pause. 4 figures, 1 large, 3 small. The large one had strange appendages that could have been arms. The 3 small ones had the distinctive spine ridges of Velkari cubs. They were clustered together, all holding what might have been markers. The cubs hadn't just been copying Amelia's doodles. They'd been drawing what they saw, what they understood their world to be. A pack, working together. The camera feed shifted to story hour. Amelia sat cross-legged on the floor, a data pad propped against her knee. The three cubs had arranged themselves around her in a semicircle, and each one held their favorite drawing from the day's work. They were completely still, completely focused on her voice as she read about humans exploring distant worlds. "Okay, tomorrow we're learning about shapes," Amelia said as the story concluded. "I'll doodle circles, you try triangles. Deal?" Three chirps of agreement, perfectly synchronized. "Good. Now, bedtime routine? Everyone to your sleeping areas. Yes, you can take your drawings with you, Stripe." Zillax opened a direct channel to Central Command, watching the cubs settle into their designated rest areas without a single prompt beyond Amelia's gentle direction. "Log entry," he began, his voice carrying the weight of witnessed impossibility. "Human behavioral specialist continues to exceed all projections through unconventional methodology. Cubs demonstrate advanced development across all metrics. 0 incidents. Perfect pack cohesion. Recommend expanding Miss Williams' contract indefinitely and implementing human-compatible protocols across all relevant programs Federation-wide." He paused, watching Amelia dim the habitat lights and settle at her desk with a book, actual paper like the cubs' drawings, for her own quiet time. Additional note: humanity's approach to child-rearing appears universally applicable regardless of species. They see babies before they see predators. This perspective may be their most valuable contribution to the Federation to date. On screen, 3 apex predators slept peacefully, their crude drawings clutched in their claws like treasures. And tomorrow, they'd learn about triangles.